CRPN Central, this is Dr. Fox. Please like, comment, subscribe. It helps the mission more than you know so that I can do more for you. Welcome to Monday, everyone. How's it going? I mean, my gosh, it's Monday, but not only is it Monday, it is the last Monday of June. We have almost made it. We are a half through the year of 2026. Yay, applause. We made it. How'd you fare? How you doing? Hopefully everyone's doing okay. The industry is kind of wild right now, and I look forward to seeing how things are going. CRPN is free for sites to join. It is super affordable for sponsors. You will save money in all of your financial management. Sites can leave anytime, and they have access to free trials. So if you are not a member yet of CRPN, give them a try. All right, welcome to TrialSide Chats, the place where the CRPN community comes together. We want to come together, make sure that we can share our challenges in the industry so that maybe we can try to identify best practices and work through it in a way that we can better serve our patients. So, full disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer. I never said I was a lawyer. However, these are the culminations. These are true stories in the industry. These have actually happened. Of course, the names have been removed, the innocent and sometimes the not so innocent. But if you do not agree to this disclaimer, please just shut the video off now. No worries, no harm, no foul. But by continuing, you do agree to it. Now, one thing I have noticed is I have been watching past TrialSide chats, and there has been some pretty nasty internet lagging. So I'm doing everything that I can to try to accommodate that so we can improve the quality for our listeners, so we can deliver this content to you and better serve you. Because this is like a pretty much a PowerPoint slide, and because you really don't need to be seeing me a whole lot while we're doing it, if I do have any intermittent lagging, I'll turn off my video. I'll keep talking. We'll get through the content. All right, so this is a very, very sensitive subject. We're going to talk about anything financial, specifically in clinical research. This is, it must be confidential, absolutely, hands down. There will be no names, no organizations, no finger pointing. We're only looking at concepts and case studies so that we can hopefully target the best practices. I should also note this is episode number 19. We are almost done with the first chapter of the story, the negotiations, the pre-studies. So how are you liking this content? According to this and looking at the book, we could hit up to maybe episode 40 by the end of the year and hopefully get through the whole book so that everything that you need sites out there, everything that you need should be available at your fingertips to help to support you and therefore to help to support our patients. Icebreaker. So this has happened many times, and I've seen it happen in more ways than what we're talking about here. But it's been months, and we've already started enrolling in this trial. Why don't we have our startup payment? Yes. So there's a number of reasons why this could be happening. The most common reason that I can think of is that, of course, if you have a really good financial process and a really good financial practice, you signed the contract, you may have gotten green light, whatever those two triggers are, and bam, you sent that invoice just like your whole system should have done. If you haven't, that's number one. Did you send the invoice? The other one is supposed to get auto paid, but sometimes CROs have their own special independent banking information form that has to be filled out. It's not in the contract, it's not in the CTA, and sometimes depending on the negotiator that you've had, that form should have been sent to your site to fill out, but it never was. So what ends up happening is if you sent the invoice and if the invoice is late, and if you are actively aging and working the aging of your money, your invoices, you're going to end up having a late invoice for startup. And then you're going to come back and say, hey, this is late. What's going on? And sometimes the CROs will come back and say, well, banking form. Here's a banking form. That's one way to unclog that startup payment. The other one is really, really read your contracts. Sometimes startup payments have provisions and contingencies on them. Very, very common practice right now is trying to pay only half of your startup and have the other half of your startup be contingent on your enrollment. It's an enrollment incentive. So be sure that you read your contract, sure that you understand your CTA about that startup payment. Is it auto paid versus invoiced? Is it during CTA execution or at the SIV or green light? And do you have any provisions around it? That could really explain why you may not have seen a startup payment yet, even though you are actively enrolling your patients, or at least actively screening. All right, so today we're going to cover the book, little bitty chapters here and there. We're really, really close to the end of section 2 of the book, the pre-study phase. If you'd like to buy the book, if you need this to support your site, it is available on Amazon. And thank you so much to the comments from the last TrialSide chat. Someone's like, well, where do I find it? And I'm like, well, I put a QR code up there. How are you supposed to look at a QR code when it's on a YouTube video? I don't think that technology is where you can click on a QR code like you click on a link. So I put the link down there for everyone. So if you do want to buy the book, it's right there. Thank you so much for supporting the CRPN community. If you want to buy directly from CRPN, we can give you 10% off and free shipping. Big publication alert. Big congratulations to Brad Hightower. Awesome case study talking about the best practices in clinical research for a site and how they impact finances directly with metrics. This is just a case study, and I would love for someone to read it, shred it, and do their own case study. The point is we need to keep this conversation going, and this is the start. So keep it going. Here's the torch. Run with it. All right, so we are on the back end of the invoices and invoiceables. Specifically, we have spent the last 2 episodes talking about first the administrative invoices and then about the regulatory invoices. We're going to cap it off with those operations invoices, the operations pillar. Now, you have to ask yourself, what do you mean operations invoices? That doesn't make sense. We've got a schedule of assessments that talks about operations. Why would you have to invoice for it? Well, that's a really, really good question, and we'll answer that. So the operations invoices cover patients. It's all about the patient. Procedures for patients, the services for patients, whatever you do that helps the patient and follows the protocol is the operations invoice. Now, you really have to check, and I've seen this before too. There's like a PI and they said, well, I don't get it. We've been running this trial for 6 months and I haven't seen a dime. What the heck's going on? We've been enrolling like crazy. And then you look at them and you say, hey, have you sent an invoice? So you cannot assume that patients are always auto pay. A lot of times in the lower budget CROs, the ones that don't have a lot of deep pockets for EDC verification, they will require you to invoice for every single thing that you do. There is no auto pay. So you need operations invoices to cover whatever that might be if you don't have auto pay payments. The other thing that the operations invoices do is they help to itemize. So in events where sponsors want to pay only for what they are getting for services, specifically I'm pointing at you, screen fail visits and unscheduled visits, when that happens, they don't want to pay a flat rate. They only want to pay for what happened in the event that like a screen fail visit was partial. They're not going to pay for what didn't happen. So they have to have in the contract a list of those operational invoices for all of the different things that could be itemized in the event that you have to break down a visit. That is the operations invoice. Now, they can still be stratified, and we'll go by time and occurrence, just like we did before. And it all has to do with, again, patients. So there aren't as many time-driven operations invoices as there are a la carte occurrence invoices. However, there are some. PI oversight is one of them where you can get a timely monthly, annual, quarterly type payment for PI oversight, because maybe it's a trial that is super, they need a lot of PI oversight. And rather than having the PI sit there and bill every single day for everything that they do, it saves the sponsor money if they just say, okay, we'll give you some amount of money over some form of time for the time that your PI has to put into the trial. I've also seen um, almost like a subscription-based, monthly-based screening payment. So rather than one screen fail at a time, this sponsor is trying to do a time-based screening payment so that for every month that you are screening for patients, whether they screen fail or not, you get like a lump sum. You get a flat rate every single month for the screening efforts of the trial. So that's another thing that's fully invoiceable. You have to communicate with your team, make sure that they're aware that if it's to be for, and you can go that way. There have been some big pushes recently, especially with CRC shortages, that the same thing happens with CRCs. There are many sponsors and CROs out there who offer some kind of a per diem, some kind of a monthly or quarterly payment, sometimes with documentation of CRC support. In other words, sometimes there are third parties that offer CRCs to sites for a trial because you need additional effort for the trial. Sometimes that happens for recruitment. Sometimes it happens specifically for the trial, for raters, for things like that. So whatever that staffing time is over the course of time, you could also see in a possible invoiceable. Now, the other thing is, aside from the itemization that we talked about, the occurrence also happens with the high ticket items. And so many times sponsors and CROs try to deflate the value of their per patient values in their visits by carving out those really expensive services into their own invoices. I'm talking about radiology and procedures. Those are the primary ones. MRI, PET scans, you're talking about thousands of dollars at a time. They don't want that to be in their per patient value sometimes because they try to carve out overhead out of it. So that way they don't have to pay overhead on tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in radiology. Same thing with procedures. So biopsies, surgeries, amputations, anything like that, where you have to have facility charges, maybe overnight stays, some things that are really, really expensive. Sponsors prefer not to have that in per patient values. And so as a result, they're going to say, okay, every time this happens, you're going to have an invoice. Same thing with if it is as needed. So pregnancy tests are a prime example of some kind of an invoiceable activity that doesn't happen all the time. Like what if your trial participants don't need pregnancy tests? You're not going to bake that into each visit. Instead, you're going to flag when it happened, and then you're going to invoice for it as it is needed. Another one, sometimes radiology, like EKGs or any of the really expensive ones, sponsors will say, okay, well, if it has happened within the last 6 months prior to the screening visit and randomization, we can accept those results. And so as a bill for that expensive radiology procedure. Number one, it prevents the patients from having to undergo additional radiology and additional exposure to radiation. But also, too, it's a cost thing so that sponsors are saying, hey, we'll just accept some of the medical records of the healthcare system rather than requiring our own fresh radiology procedure. Local labs are huge. Local labs are obviously local, so it's something that the site is going to have to pay. Maybe if it's integrated into a hospital, it's going to keep it internal. If they have to contract out for local labs, like whatever the lab that they're working with, they're going to have some rate. They're going to have to pay for the labs and then get the money through an invoice. And then finally, weekend time. So it's another one I have seen many, many times in the invoices, especially the ops invoices for the sponsors who are really, really trying to be strong on enrollment. They're going to offer kind of like a weekend differential per hour so that if sites do have to work over the weekends, sure enough, the sponsor can help pay for a weekend differential. But pay attention to the provisions on that one. Many, many times it's a good idea. However, what ends up happening is it's really, really hard to reduce to practice. So be careful. Be sure to read the fine print. So let's talk about myths. So number one is I have worked with so many different operations teams. And the good news is that almost every single operations team that I work with, they sit there and they are all about the patients. And they are so patient that they become blind to the business. And it's amazing to me how it doesn't matter what coast you're on, coast to coast, whatever it is, that passion for the patient is what drives us all, every single person, especially the coordinators. So, coordinators, what I need to say right now is in no way, shape, or form meant to be a way to insult what you are doing and the passion that you are driving. You are 100% correct. That is the way to think. What I do want to request of each of you is to consider how we, as an administration, can continue to pay for your paycheck so that you can help those patients. And to do that, we need to talk about a couple myths. So, the first one is, and I've heard this before, oh, the trial budget includes everything that a trial needs. We get this budget, the sponsor and CRO did a lot of work on it, they've created it. So we're going to trust their work because obviously they have more resources than we do to put into it. And there's no way that we could possibly do something that's better than what they have provided us. It is so very common. I can't tell you how common it is for sites who do their due diligence, who look at a protocol, then who look at the budget to find missing budget items in the contract and budget. Footnotes are one of the biggest culprits, or like some strange lab somewhere in section 9, that's not in the SOA, talking about a required lab for some kind of a contingency. Whatever it might be, I have to tell you, sites, that it's really important to double check your budget that is sent to you by the sponsor and CRO with the protocol. And not just the first time around. Every time there's a protocol amendment, make sure that your budget that you originally signed is still within scope of the changes of the trial. What if they added labs? What if they added procedures? What if they did things that the budget does not cover in the protocol? You're not going to know. So it's okay to have a professional trust with the sponsors and CROs that we're working with, that we're all in the same, we're doing it for the right reasons. But it is not okay to sit there and just assume 100% correct and that you don't have to validate what is in that budget versus what is in the protocol. The next one is the sponsors and CROs offer for operations service is fair market value and I can't negotiate it. Heard that one too. So CROs are very adamant about informing you that they have used this big benchmarking system and that this is fair market value and they have done a lot of work into this and that this is the truth. And I'm here to tell you that that's like someone, like a customer walking into a restaurant or a store saying, well, I am the expert and this is the price that you should be charging me for the product that I want. No, that's not how it works. So yes, you should absolutely 100% be negotiating all of these operations line items, from the informed consent and the demographics all the way to the very specific radiology, MRIs, specific procedures for that transplantation, whatever it might be. My friends, if you are not negotiating these line items, if you are not increasing their value, you are dooming your trial and the trials for all of the sites who accept that and in the future. So please do not just assume that what you are given is what the truth is going to be. You are expected to negotiate. Oh, my favorite. This is the big saying, finance isn't our job. I see the patients and they pay the site for what we do. It's that simple. By they mean the CRO. So many times I work with coordinators that sit there and say, hey, it's not my job. The patient's my job. You guys figure the rest out. That's it. No, that's a clear disconnect. And it's a disconnect because it is absolutely critical to have that communication plan with the people who are in the trenches doing the thing, to tell the administrators what that thing is so that the administrators can interpret that into a contract and convert it into revenue so that we can pay those paychecks, just like I was saying. We have to kind of break that culture. I don't know if you remember, finance is everybody's job. I've got t-shirts that say it. Finance really is everybody's job. Coordinators, we depend on you. I know you depend on us for a paycheck. We depend on you to get the information so we can get that paycheck. So please just delete that out of your mind, that not your job and that you can only focus on the patient. We need to figure out ways to allow you to serve your patients and also get the revenue out of it so we can pay you. Oh, and this is so common. This next one, I don't understand why. So I would love to understand where this culture comes from. But I think it may be from the term sponsor. So, in other words, sponsor is okay, we supply all the resources to you. We're going to sponsor you to do this. I don't know what it is, but it's always if we need something, we just do it and the sponsor will pay for it. Oh, the trial's a giant blank check. We need it, they pay for it. It's that simple. No, sites, I'm trying to tell you, it's it's almost like an art. I don't know if it's a sport or whatever it is, but to try to figure out how much the site can do without pay, it seems like it's a sport for many sponsors and CROs. They craft the contracts in just the right way. They make a disconnect between the contract and the protocol. Not saying it's on purpose, but I am saying that the contract is the contract. And if you need something that's beyond the contract for the protocol, you're out of scope. And if you're out of scope with the contract, if you do it, you're not going to get paid. If you don't do it, you need to speak up and then you need to get money for it and then you can do it. But whatever you do, don't just think that this is a willy-nilly blank check. We need it, they pay for it, end of story thing. There is a continuous battle to try to get the resources for a trial from the sponsor to the site to take care of the patients. And finally, we get paid for everything that we do on a trial. This is very similar to the one before, but with specific examples. How many things can we get the site to do without pay? And I think that is something that is a major objective somehow, some way between negotiators and the trial managers at the CRO and sponsor level. And a perfect textbook example that we run into all the time now is unscheduled visits prior to randomization. That's right. So did you know, coordinators, that if you had to bring a patient in for another blood draw for a screening, or if you had to bring them in for assessment, whatever it is, if you lock in unscheduled visits before that patient is randomized, you just did a ton of free work. That's right. Free, unpaid work. You will not be paid for unscheduled visits unless a patient has enrolled into a trial. Same thing with booster calls. So we just ran into this recently. It is absolutely critical to understand that now we have CROs who are signing educators and people who are not CRAs or whatever it is to come there and continuously and routinely schedule calls with sites and expect the sites to do those phone calls without pay. And this is happening right now. I can tell you that sites, you've got to be on the guard because my guess is you have a lot of industry parasites out there who are draining you resources without paying you. Be really careful about that. Coordinators, please check with your finance team. Make sure that your finance team confirms that what is being asked of you is a payable event, and try to prevent as much free work as possible. All right, so as promised, this is a super short one, and that's okay. I see a comment. Woohoo! Finances ever. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Let me know if you want a t-shirt. All right. So next week, so that wraps up the operations invoiceables. It was a super short one. I should note that a lot of what you see on the operations invoice list is very duplicated compared to the schedule assessments because it's planning out the times that operations services happen that are not on the schedule assessments. So I'm really glad to see that one through, but importantly, I'm glad to see all 3 episodes come through: admin, regulatory, operations, all invoices ready for you, my friends, so that you can take this information You can invoice to your heart's content and hopefully survive a little bit longer in the industry. Oh boy, so next week is going to be an interesting one. I have a lot of emotion around this topic, but now that we have covered all of different pillars, all of the different auto pay, all of the different invoices, we're going to start to talk about the pathway to justify those to the sponsors. How do we craft justifications in a way so that we can get all those different things that we tried to negotiate approved? So, justifications next week. If you have any comments, pointers on justifications that you'd like to share, please feel free to send those comments in. We'll be sure to cover them. How do you handle justifications? If the handling of it has changed a lot in the past year with things like AI, things like that, any kind of large language model, odds are justifications have absolutely evolved since what we have done before. All right, so huge announcement. I'll be doing this until October. SCRS Site Solutions Summit 20th anniversary. Holy smokes, 2 decades of advocating for our sites. Big congratulations to SCRS. Really looking forward to being there. But come see us at booth. Yes, that's right. CRPN is exhibiting at SCRS. I have a big surprise for every single one of you. And the only hint that I'm going to let you know is I would encourage you to come by the booth and get your negotiation swag. That's right. That's all I'm going to say. So, again, CRPN is free for sites to join, affordable for sponsors. There is the website QR code, YouTube QR code, which I just realized you absolutely cannot access on a YouTube channel. So I'm going to have to change this slide up. Do apologize for everyone. That also tells me no one ever uses it. So we'll see how that goes. But if you want to join CRPN, the content is ending, but the conversation is just now starting. So let me know if you want to come on stage and share your stories. This is Dr. Fox. Please like, comment, subscribe, share your voice. See you next time.